Let's see if we can continue making news. Joining us right now, Sean Cairncross. He's the Chief Operating Officer of the Republican National Committee. Mr. Cairncross, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Isn't it true that Ted Cruz is just a tool of the Republican establishment and he's dancing at the strings of the evil overlord Reince Priebus? Yeah. I'm just kidding. That's not really my first question.
You don't really expect.
Let's talk about this convention. You're kind of, as the Chief Operating Officer, you're going to have to sort of do a whole lot of operating at this convention, probably more than you expected. Let me ask you about something that a lot of people are talking about, and that is this Rule 40 thing, which says that for somebody to be considered a nominee for president, they have to have won 8 states. Now, does that mean they had to win the primary in those states, or does that mean that...
No, well, first, Larry, and let me back up just to say on the first part of that, which is on the operating side and the RNC's role. The RNC's role in this is essentially to make sure that the process functions smoothly and there's an open and transparent process that lets the arguments, the substantive arguments and the votes take place. And so, this is getting a lot of attention this cycle just based on the delegate math. The role of the RNC is really no different than it's been in any other convention, which is to administer and to oversee that. Like I say, it's a smooth process. So that being said, moving on to the actual rules themselves.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that, by the way, for explaining what you guys are doing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, not at all. And so the rules themselves as a package are the rules that were passed by the 2012 convention by the Romney delegates. And those rules will be a new rule package will be passed by the 2016 Rules Committee, by a majority of that committee, which is made up of delegates. It will go to the floor of the convention. It'll be adopted by a majority of delegates. And people may say, scratch their heads and go, well, why do the rules need to change? It's not that they're changing, it's that the delegates to that convention have changed, and they decide for themselves the rules that they want to operate under, any more than you wouldn't lock yourself into a platform indefinitely. Because every 4 years, the party comes together and says, this is what we want our message and our platform to be, and this is what we want the rules that we operate under in a convention to be. So it's the same process that plays out every cycle. It's just drawing a lot of attention.
So rules that are on the books right now will not apply to the new convention because they won't necessarily.
The rules that are on the books right now, by definition, and people can go online and they can look at this, it's the rules are available on the RNC's website. The rules of the National Party, there are 42 rules. It's a 42-page document, and Rule 42 makes expressly clear these are temporary rules. So what happens is the convention passes a rules package. The RNC and its operations are governed by those rules for the intervening 4 years. And then coming into the new convention, those are temporary rules, and the Convention Rules Committee passes a new package of rules that is voted out by a majority of delegates onto the floor of the convention and will be adopted by a majority of delegates on the floor.
All right, so if they're going to have a new set of rules that will actually govern this coming convention at a time when it may well be a contested convention, certainly it's beginning to look more and more like that, then who's on this rules committee and who is going to be making these decisions?
Sure. The rules committee, so each state selects and elects a delegation that it sends to the convention. So, for example, let's just take Florida. Florida has 99 delegates. Those 99 delegates, once those delegates are selected, will come together and they will hold an election inside that delegation. And they'll elect a delegation chairman, and then they'll elect members to each of the 4 convention committees. One man and one woman from inside the delegation will go to, and no delegate can serve on more than one committee, will go to and there are 4 of them. There's the Credentials Committee, there's the Rules Committee, there's the Platform Committee, and then there's the Committee on Permanent Organization. And so each of those committees, there are 112 members of each committee, and they'll pass by majority a report that doing their business. And so the Credentials Committee, what that does is it sets the permanent role of the convention, because every convention and every gathering needs to decide who is entitled to be there and entitled to vote. So the Credentials Committee will pass that report. That'll be adopted on the floor by majority. The same is true for the Rules Committee, the Platform Committee, and the Committee on Permanent Organization. And what the Committee on Permanent Organization does is it ratifies the convention officers, so the chairman of the convention, the vice chair, the secretary, et cetera.
So it sounds like there are various scenarios that can happen at this convention in Cleveland. Listen, there are some rules that the Republican Party have had at their conventions that are sacrosanct, like you have to have 50% plus one of the delegates to win the nomination. You don't foresee a rule coming up that would change that, would you? Right? But there are some rules that could change. For instance, I mean, do you see a scenario where this rules committee, made up of the delegates in the way that you've just described, could determine that you don't necessarily have to be a declared candidate for president to be nominated and win the nomination?
Well, this is what I would say. This gets to your earlier question on Rule 40B. And what Rule 40B actually says is not that you have to have won 8 states. This is getting into the weeds of the rules, but these...
No, it's okay. We want to get into the weeds a little today, yeah.
And so what it says is you have to demonstrate the support of a majority of delegates from 8 states. And what that means is a majority of 8 states delegation have to signal their support, and mechanically, typically how it works is they sign a form for you. And then that, once you demonstrate that support, that places your name into nomination. But that's different. So, for example, you have states that are unbound. North Dakota is unbound. Regardless of who... Well,
let me ask you this. Sean, we're almost out of time. I know where you're going with this. Let me ask you this. Is it possible that the Rules Committee, before the convention even begins, could change the rules with regard to bound delegates? Could they just, starting right off the bat, could they say, okay, this first ballot, it's a free-for-all. Anyone can vote for whomever they want?
Well, this convention, Larry, like every convention, will be governed under the rules that the delegates at that convention...
In other words, yes.
Well, what I'd say is, but I want to make very clear, you have a rules committee, that passes a report by majority, and anything coming out of that rules committee, it doesn't immediately take effect. Nothing takes effect until it is adopted by a majority of the delegates on the floor, and that's the majority of the 2,472 people coming in from the grassroots of the states.
And by the way, the Rules Committee gets hardly any attention during these conventions.
No,
it happens the first day. This is going to be one of the most closely watched.
It would seem to me that if you're a candidate, you want to make sure that each state is electing your guy to the Rules Committee.
Yeah, you would think.
That's what's probably going on behind the scenes.
Sean Cairncross, one of the dynamic Seans over there at the RNC, but not the one who is a Red Sox fan, so we like you better, Sean Cairncross.
And then the last thing I'd say is everyone should go to conventionfacts.gop if they've got questions on this.
Yeah, I got to say, Cairncross and his team over there at the RNC have been very open about this. They put everything out there. It's all available for everybody to see, and nothing has changed. These are all the rules from 4 years ago. All right, sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Larry, Brian, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Again, I know that this outrages people when they think, oh my gosh, what they can, but as a political junkie and just someone who watches this process, this is so cool to watch what's going on here and what might happen at these conventions.
Fascinating.
Both of them. Pop the popcorn.